The applause was still going when I knocked over the champagne flute. It didn't shatter, just tipped, spun once, and rolled off the tablecloth onto the tile. Nobody noticed. Or they pretended not to. That part's never clear. What was clear? She didn't flinch. She didn't glance back at me. Meryl was still at the center of the room, soaking in praise, hugging her coworkers like they were family. The same coworkers she once called leeches with PowerPoints. 15 minutes earlier, she'd stood up in front of 70 guests, held a microphone like it was a weapon, and said, "There comes a point in life when you stop apologizing for outgrowing the people who no longer challenge you." Some people laughed. One guy actually nodded, like she'd dropped some ancient pearl of wisdom. Me? I went numb. She wasn't reading a quote from a book. That was directed, measured. It had an aim. I'd spent the last 4 weekends assembling this night, coordinating menus, building a handmade timeline board, even calling her estranged uncle to convince him to attend. I hand-painted table numbers. I practiced my toast 3 times in front of the mirror. She told me to keep it short, but this wasn't short. And it wasn't about retiring from her job. It was about retiring from me. The final blow came when she said, "And thank you, most of all, to the people who made me realize I don't have to stay loyal to comfort when growth is calling." Her eyes met mine. The clapping erupted. That's when I stood up. Quietly. I didn't grab my coat. Didn't look around. Just started walking across the floor, past the stairs, past the string quartet still finishing their rendition of Viva la Vida. Then her voice, sharp and desperate. "Clyde, wait. Please just come back. I didn't mean you. I didn't mean it like that. Please. I love you. Don't go." I kept walking. That night, I slept in the back seat of my car outside a bowling alley. And at 3:12 a.m., I did something I'd never done in 17 years of marriage. I turned off my phone. When I turned it back on the next morning, I had 6 missed calls, 3 voicemails, and 1 email from her, with a subject line that read, "I never meant for you to find out this way." And what was inside that email? That's when the real story began. There was no apology in that email. No, "I'm sorry." No, "I made a mistake." Not even a placeholder sentence to cushion what she clearly knew would gut me. Just 8 words in the subject line, followed by 2 cold paragraphs and 1 link. "I never meant for you to find out this way." I stared at that subject line for 10 minutes before opening it. I was still sitting in the car. The back seat smelled like old coffee and panic sweat. My neck was stiff from sleeping like a pretzel, and my left foot had gone numb, but I couldn't move. I didn't dare move. The body of the email read, "Clyde, I don't know how else to do this. I was going to tell you after the party. I swear I was. But everything spiraled and I said too much, and then you left." Panicked. "I didn't want it to come out like this. I know you'll be hurt. I know you'll feel betrayed. I need you to understand that this didn't happen overnight. I haven't been happy for a long time. Please don't make this uglier than it has to be. Here's what you deserve to know. Link." That was it. Not even a love, Meryl. Just M like she was signing a company memo. I clicked the link. It was a shared Google Drive folder. Inside were 3 videos, each labeled with the same initials. R. W. At first I didn't recognize them. Then it hit me. Raymond Whitlow. Her work friend. The one she always said was too obsessed with spreadsheets to flirt with anything but Excel. The one who gave me a silent nod every time we crossed paths. The one who Meryl once claimed was repulsed by married people. The first video was filmed in a hotel room. Meryl was sitting on the edge of a bed, laughing. Not nervous laughter. Not awkward. That deep, open laugh she used to have only for me back when we were still something more than roommates. The camera panned, and there he was, Raymond, shirtless, grinning, holding a champagne bottle. I slammed my laptop shut. My chest felt like it was folding in on itself. Like I'd been punched, but from the inside. I didn't cry. I didn't scream. I just sat there, jaw clenched, ears ringing like I'd stood too close to a bomb. This was planned. Organized. She filmed it, uploaded it, labeled it. This wasn't a one-night mistake. This was her archiving a life without me. And the kicker? The videos weren't dated recently. The earliest one was from nearly 11 months ago. That meant she'd still been kissing me goodnight, still eating dinner at our table, still smiling in our Christmas photo while already living a double life with a man who wears silk shirts and drinks room service champagne. I felt pathetic. Not just because she cheated, but because I'd been working overtime to buy her that damn anniversary bracelet last month while she was sleeping in someone else's arms. While I was thinking maybe if I just tried harder. I didn't know what to do next. Confront her? Leave town? Pretend I never saw it and wait for her to come home so I could watch her lie to my face? But then something unexpected happened. The door to the bowling alley creaked open behind me. I turned around, startled, and saw a woman in a red hoodie standing there, staring at my car. She mouthed something through the windshield I couldn't quite make out. She walked up slowly, knocked twice on the glass, and said, "You're Clyde, right? I think you and I need to talk. I'm Raymond's wife." That was the moment I realized this wasn't just betrayal. This was something much bigger. I didn't move. I couldn't. My legs were still locked in the same rigid position they'd been since I saw the first second of that video. My hand hovered near the door handle, but I wasn't sure if I was opening it to let her in or bolting it shut so I could pretend she wasn't real. But she was. She stood right there, hair pulled back, dark circles under her eyes like she hadn't slept in weeks, and in her hand, a thick manila folder that looked like it had been folded and unfolded 100 times. Her voice was low, almost too calm. "My name's Harper. I saw your name in the email thread. I've been waiting for the right time, but after what she said last night, I figured you deserved the rest of the truth." The rest of the truth? That phrase felt like a sledgehammer to the chest. As if what I had seen so far, the hotel videos, the icy email, the years of deception, was only a preview. I stepped out of the car. My knees buckled slightly when I stood, but I played it off by pretending to adjust my coat. Harper didn't flinch. She handed me the folder without saying another word and nodded toward the concrete ledge in front of the bowling alley. We both sat there in the icy quiet of a Sunday morning with passing cars and a flickering neon closed sign as our only witnesses. Inside the folder were printed screenshots. Dozens of them. Text messages, emails, calendar invites. Meryl and Raymond had been talking daily, no, hourly for over a year. There were notes on what to tell me, signals for when to lie, even shared spreadsheets of plausible travel excuses. It was surreal. Corporate-level betrayal. I felt like I was reading through a heist blueprint, only I was the clueless guard being walked around the vault. Then I saw something I hadn't expected, my name. Repeatedly. "Don't worry about Clyde. He's harmless. He's so desperate to please her, it's kind of sad. Just nod and smile at him. He never asks questions." Each word chipped away at whatever pride I had left. Harper watched me read, never interrupting. When I looked up, I saw that she was crying quiet, controlled tears like someone who'd spent months rationing pain so it wouldn't drown her. "I tried to confront Raymond 3 weeks ago," she said finally. "He told me I was imagining things. Said I was acting paranoid. Gaslit me until I started to believe it. But then I found this." She pulled out a printed email thread where Raymond had forwarded one of Meryl's vacation selfies to his private account. I recognized the bedsheets. That was her summer cabin. He took her there. I wanted to say something, anything, but my mouth was dry. My mind kept flashing back to last July when Meryl said she was going on a girls' retreat to rediscover herself. I remembered how excited she was to pack, how she asked me not to call too much because they'd be doing a lot of silence rituals. I even sent her a playlist of relaxing nature sounds. And the whole time she was in another woman's marriage bed. I was done trying to cry. That part of me had shut off. "I don't know what to do," Harper whispered. "But I can't keep pretending. And I thought maybe you shouldn't either." We sat there for another hour, barely speaking, just breathing the same miserable air. Before she left, Harper gave me her number and said, "If you want to hit back." "I have an idea. But only if you're ready to see this through." I didn't answer her right away. Because I wasn't ready. Not yet. I wasn't someone who hits back. I was the guy who apologizes when someone else bumps into him. But something in me was shifting, slowly, like tectonic plates realigning after years of pressure. I went home after she left. Meryl's car was already in the driveway. I stepped inside and the lights were on. She was sitting at the kitchen island, holding a mug of tea like nothing had happened. Like we were still married. Like the ground beneath our life hadn't completely collapsed. She looked up and smiled nervously. "You're home. Can we talk?" For the first time in 17 years, I didn't answer with a yes. Instead, I said, "Not yet. First, I want you to tell me what the words Freedom Files mean to you." Her face went white. I didn't raise my voice. I didn't throw anything. I didn't even step any closer. I just said those 2 words, freedom files, and watched every molecule of color drain from her face like I'd whispered a curse that touched her soul. Her mug clinked against the counter as her hand trembled. She opened her mouth, but for once nothing came out. The silence between us was thicker than anything I'd ever known, thicker than the years of quiet resentment, the missed dinner conversations, the mornings where her back was turned just slightly too long. I don't know what you're talking about, she stammered, eyes darting to the side like a child trying to scan for an escape route. Her voice cracked, not the emotional kind, but the guilty kind. The kind that doesn't expect to be caught. You labeled it that, Meryl, I said, calmly, almost eerily. You filmed your hotel getaways, stored the videos, titled them like chapters in a memoir, and uploaded them to a drive. A drive you thought I'd never see. She blinked fast, breathing unevenly now. Clyde, it's not what you... Don't insult me again, I said, my tone sharpening just slightly. Don't you dare tell me what I saw didn't happen. Don't tell me Raymond was a mistake. You had folders, Meryl. You named them. She gripped the counter like it might anchor her to reality. I could tell she was trying to figure out what I knew, how much, whether I had spoken to anyone. She didn't realize yet how far ahead I was. I wasn't angry in the way she expected. I wasn't spiraling. That terrified her more than anything. Why? I finally asked. Why not just leave me? Why build this second life, smile in our pictures, hold my hand at your parents' barbecue, sleep in our bed, and still do that? She paused. And then, as if a mask slipped off her entire face, she said, because you were never enough, Clyde. There it was. I took a step back like she'd physically hit me, but I kept my gaze on her. She wasn't even crying now. Her face hardened like she'd rehearsed this version of herself in the mirror and had finally decided to let it out. You always hovered. You double-checked everything. You made things safe but small. I needed more. I needed fire. And you were warm tap water. I didn't want to hurt you. But I wasn't going to shrink myself just to protect your feelings. I should have said something sharp. I should have yelled. Instead, I whispered, but you let me plan your retirement party. You let me spend hours making collages. You watched me get down on one knee again last year with that anniversary ring and said yes. Why do that? She shrugged. Because it kept you stable. Because you wouldn't survive the truth all at once. You're not as brave as you pretend to be, I muttered. You weren't trying to spare me. You were protecting yourself from looking like the villain. We stood in silence for a while. She stared at me like she didn't know who I was anymore, and maybe she didn't. Maybe I didn't either. I thought I was the husband who could fix things. The guy who could absorb emotional punches and still smile through them. But something had broken that night. Something had cracked beyond repair. You know what the saddest part is? I asked. I would have forgiven you if you'd just told me. If you'd confessed before it got this ugly, I would have been heartbroken, sure, but maybe we'd still have some dignity left. But now, you buried it all under so many lies, I don't even recognize the sound of your voice anymore. I still love you, she whispered. No, I said, you love the idea of me. The version who keeps the lights on while you disappear into someone else's arms. She didn't respond. I turned, walked into the bedroom, and pulled the small duffel I'd left behind the day before. But this time I also reached under the mattress, pulled out the envelope with the deed to the cabin, our cabin, and tucked it into the bag. When I stepped back into the kitchen, she hadn't moved. I'll be staying at the cabin for now, I said. Don't come looking for me. And if you think this ends here, Meryl, you're mistaken. She looked up, startled. What does that mean? It means I'm not going to let you control the narrative, I said softly. I'm not going to be the quiet man who vanishes while you paint yourself as a phoenix rising. You're not the victim in this story. Not anymore. As I closed the door behind me, I felt something strange for the first time in a long while, clarity. Not peace, not revenge. Just the beginning of something new. A clean ache that somehow still felt better than years of numbness. And as fate would have it, someone was already waiting at the cabin. A familiar car parked by the porch. Harper. She wasn't finished either. I don't know what I expected when I pulled into the gravel lot beside the cabin, but it wasn't headlights already cutting through the trees. Harper's old Mazda was parked beside the deck, its windshield streaked with pine needles and dust like it hadn't moved in days. I stepped out of my car cautiously, unsure if she was still here or if she'd just left the car behind, and hiked into the woods for air. The place smelled like rain was coming, earthy, damp, raw. The way it always smelled after everything familiar turns inside out. Before I could even knock on the door, it creaked open. Harper stood in the frame wearing a wool sweater and jeans, holding a mug of coffee like she'd been expecting me. She didn't smile, didn't say hi or how are you or any of the other useless greetings we use to avoid truth. She just stepped aside and let me in. Inside the cabin, the air was still. The furniture hadn't changed since Meryl and I last visited, blankets folded on the arm of the couch, books I left half-read still stacked by the fireplace. Except now there was a giant corkboard hanging on the far wall, covered in notes, photos, printouts, strings connecting points like something out of a conspiracy movie. You weren't kidding when you said you had an idea, I muttered, setting my bag down. I don't do half measures anymore, Harper said, crossing her arms. I spent the last 2 years watching my marriage rot from the inside while Raymond gaslit me into believing it was my fault. I nearly checked myself into a facility last winter because I thought I was the crazy one. Then I found this, she pointed to a printed flight itinerary, and realized he took your wife to San Diego while telling me he was at a climate equity symposium. I didn't know whether to laugh or collapse. She gestured to the board. Look, I've been compiling everything. Every hotel booking, every conference they attended together but separate, every receipt. I even found a few spa appointments billed under her maiden name. It was all there, dates, places, digital breadcrumbs Meryl and Raymond had arrogantly assumed no one would ever piece together. She even had screenshots of them both logging into the same Airbnb account under an alias named S. Klein. Cute. But then Harper said something that took me off guard. I don't want to just expose them, she said, her eyes suddenly focused and cold. I want to make them live through what they put us through. I want them to feel humiliated, disoriented, unsure of their own reality. Not through violence. Not through anything illegal. But through something smarter. Something surgical. I raised an eyebrow. What are you thinking? She reached into a drawer and pulled out a flash drive. They're planning a trip to Asheville next month. Another educator summit. I intercepted the calendar invite because Raymond still syncs to our shared laptop at home. They're staying in a boutique inn. What if, while they're gone, their social media accounts start leaking their secrets? What if their supervisors start receiving anonymous packages with time-stamped images? What if their own friends start asking them questions they didn't see coming? You want to ruin their lives, I said slowly. Harper didn't hesitate. I want them to experience what it's like to watch something they built crumble in real time. But only using their own choices. Their own words. Nothing fake. Just the truth they tried to hide. I swallowed hard. Part of me recoiled. Another part, the part that had spent years getting smaller in order to make Meryl's life more comfortable, felt something unfamiliar, power. I'm not a vengeful person, I said quietly. No, Harper replied, you're just a man who thought love was enough. I was too. Until I realized some people see that as a weakness. I stared at the board. At Meryl's smiling face in a photo snapped outside the cabin with a date stamp that didn't match anything she ever told me. I thought of her speech at the party. The applause. Her begging me to stay only after realizing I'd already walked away. And then I nodded. Okay, let's do it. But one rule and no lies. No exaggerations. Just the truth. Loud enough that they can't pretend anymore. Harper exhaled like she'd been holding her breath for weeks. Agreed. We spent the next 2 hours reviewing everything. Mapping out how and when to send what. We wouldn't strike all at once. It would be a slow unraveling. A controlled burn. But just when I thought I'd seen all the darkness. Harper pulled out one last folder. There's one more thing you need to see, she said, sliding it across the table. I didn't want to believe it. But I traced this back to your home address. Inside were 6 letters. Handwritten. Folded in a way only one person folds notes, Meryl. And each of them was addressed not to Raymond but to someone else entirely. Someone named Chase. And that was the moment I realized there was still more. Harper slid the folder toward me like it was radioactive. I didn't open it right away. I just stared at it, my fingers tracing the edge like I needed to physically feel the border between what I thought I knew and what was about to upend all of that. 6 envelopes. 6 perfectly folded pieces of cream stationery, each with the unmistakable sharp-cornered slant of Meryl's handwriting. Neat. Controlled. Cold. The kind of penmanship you'd expect from a woman who signs thank you cards with just her initials but manages to make it look elegant. Who's Chase? I asked, my voice barely audible. Harper shook her head slowly. I don't know. But these were in a shoebox at the back of one of Raymond's storage units. I found it when I followed him there last week. He told me he was clearing out old campaign flyers from when he ran for school board. That was a lie. The box was under a blanket, sealed with duct tape. There were 3 other letters in there too, but they were addressed to him. From your wife. The tone was different. Like she was writing poetry. Obsessed. And then I found those. She pointed at the 6 addressed to someone else. They looked even older. No return address. No stamps. Just a name. I finally opened the first one. The letter was short. 2 paragraphs dated 7 years ago. The ink was smudged in places, like maybe she had cried while writing it or wanted it to look that way. Chase, I saw you again today. You always walk like the wind doesn't touch you. I wonder if you even remember that night by the pier, the cigarette you didn't finish, the things you said you shouldn't have. I do. Every single word. Being near you again was like standing too close to lightning. My stomach turned. The language was romantic, but not in the soft candlelit way. It was raw. It was desperate. It was a voice I had never heard from Meryl even in our most intimate moments. Harper picked up the next one and skimmed it aloud. I told Clyde I was attending a mindfulness retreat in Vermont. That was only half true. I did need silence, but not for peace. I needed it because you live there. I stood outside your art gallery for 20 minutes before turning away. I couldn't face you. Not yet. She paused, then looked at me with a mix of apology and disbelief. She was using you as the alibi for her ghost-chasing obsession. Letter after letter revealed more. Meryl had been writing to this Chase character for years, whether he responded or not. It wasn't just infidelity, it was emotional fixation. She mentioned dreams about him. She referenced specific memories I had no context for, inside jokes, burned bridges, a fight that ended in some blinding kiss she couldn't shake for months. One line gutted me more than the rest. Clyde is dependable, kind, safe. But I don't want safety anymore. I want to feel awake again. And you're the only one who ever made me feel that. I sat back, swallowing the metallic taste of rage. So what was I? I muttered to no one in particular. A sponsor? A placeholder? Harper didn't say anything for a moment. Then, softly, I don't think it was ever about you at all. I think you were the control in her experiment. Something she could always return to when the thrill wore off. I stood, pacing the creaky floorboards. My legs were buzzing with adrenaline, but my heart just felt numb. There was a point where betrayal becomes so layered, so grotesque, it almost takes on a shape you can touch. And I could feel it now. Like a second skin pressing down on mine. Harper stood too. You know what this means, right? She said. Raymond might have just been another detour. The real obsession, the person who made her feel reckless and alive, that was Chase. She's been chasing him while keeping both of us tied to her world like loyal house cats. I laughed bitterly. She used to tell me I had a calming presence. Said I was the only person who could keep her grounded. Harper's voice hardened. She didn't want grounding. She wanted a net she could fall into while climbing cliffs with someone else. I looked at the board. Then at the letters. Then at Harper. I'm done playing defense, I said finally. Let's move forward with the plan. Not to destroy her. Not even for revenge. But to finally pull back the curtain she's been hiding behind for a decade. No more secrets. Not for her. Not for Raymond. And definitely not for this Chase guy. Harper nodded, her eyes burning with the same quiet resolve. Then let's turn the truth into the loudest sound they've ever heard. What neither of us knew at that moment was that they had already started catching wind of our moves. And someone had been watching the cabin. The knock didn't come from the door. It came from the window. 3 short taps. Soft but deliberate. Harper and I both froze. I turned toward the sound and caught the tail end of a silhouette stepping out of sight behind the trees. It was dusk now, the horizon folding into a bruise-colored sky. Shadows moved differently out here. But I knew what I saw. Someone had been watching. Harper reacted first. She grabbed the corkboard off the wall in one swift motion, pulled down the folders, shut her laptop, and dumped everything into a weatherproof storage bin by the fireplace. Within seconds, the living room looked almost normal again, like 2 friends planning a hiking trip, not 2 betrayed spouses orchestrating a careful unraveling of lies. I went to the window and looked out, scanning the woods. Nothing. Then Harper said something I'll never forget. We're not ahead anymore. They know we're working together. It didn't make sense at first. How would they know? The plan wasn't even live yet. We hadn't sent the files. The emails were drafted but not scheduled. The envelopes were sealed but still locked in a drawer. But then I remembered the name on that first shared folder Meryl had emailed me, Freedom Files. I thought it was some poetic metaphor for her own liberation. But now it sounded more like a club. A shared effort. A signal. What if she didn't send that email to warn me, I said slowly, but to bait me? Harper looked up sharply. You think she wanted you to see it? Think about it, I went on. She could have just ghosted me. She didn't need to show me the affair. She didn't need to label it so clearly. But she knew I'd find the folder. And maybe she figured it'd light a fire under me, one that'd get me to walk away quietly, give her the moral high ground. Or better yet, expose myself before I knew she was already 10 steps ahead. Harper started pacing. You're saying this wasn't just an affair, it was engineered. Orchestrated. Managed like a business campaign. My God, Raymond once bragged that he could forecast human behavior better than weather models. I thought he was being arrogant. But what if they're tracking us? I checked my phone. Nothing unusual. No obvious spyware. But that's the thing about manipulation, you rarely see the strings until they're already wrapped around your throat. Harper walked into the kitchen and pulled a small burner phone from her purse. I've only been using this when I'm here. No calls. No Wi-Fi. Just in case. But from now on, we go fully analog. I nodded. We ditched all digital traces that night. Disabled the Wi-Fi. Removed the SIMs. Powered everything down. We printed the final packets using Harper's offline printer, envelopes labeled with names, dates, documents, photos. Each addressed to someone who needed to know, their employers, their families, a few close friends. And then, while Harper sealed the last envelope, I noticed something strange tucked inside one of her folders. A small manila envelope labeled, "For Clyde, only if things go south." "What is this?" I asked, holding it up. Harper looked uncomfortable for the first time in hours. "It's insurance. Something I found by accident." I opened it slowly. Inside was a flash drive and a printed transcript of an audio recording. As I skimmed it, my heart dropped. It was a conversation between Meryl and a man, not Raymond, discussing what sounded very much like a premeditated strategy for divorce. Not amicable. Not simple. Strategic. Like a hostile takeover. Lines like, "We wait until the funding clears from his father's estate. Then we hit him with dual filings, divorce, and financial misconduct. That way, he's too busy protecting his name to fight the prenup. He's not a threat. He's docile. He'll fold under pressure. He always does. Once it's over, we vanish clean. No scandal. Just silence." My hands were shaking. I turned to Harper. "When was this recorded?" "I don't know the exact date, but the transcript file says February 8th. That was just after her dad passed, right?" I nodded. "That's when the inheritance cleared. I never touched the money. I didn't even move it. I thought we agreed to wait until summer to make any decisions." Harper leaned against the table, silent. This wasn't just an affair. This was a strategy. A betrayal carefully timed around grief, finances, and perception. They had painted me into the role of a harmless fool. And I had played it well until now. "I don't want to scare you," Harper said, "but they're not just manipulative. They're calculating. They don't just lie, they structure it." Outside, the wind picked up. Pine needles scraped across the cabin windows. Somewhere deep in the woods, a twig cracked loud enough to make us both look toward the door. I stood, walked to the front porch, and turned on the motion light. No one. Just the stillness of a forest that had become a stage. But I wasn't going to wait for them to write the final scene. "We send everything," I said. "Tomorrow. No more analysis. No more prep. We press go." Harper didn't argue. Because by then, we both knew. This wasn't just about cheating anymore. It was a war for narrative. We mailed the packets at sunrise. 6 envelopes, each hand-delivered to separate drop boxes in 3 different counties. No digital trail. No tracking numbers. Just plain manila and undeniable truth. Inside each one was the carefully documented collapse of 2 people's facades, Meryl's and Raymond's. The time-stamped hotel receipts. The inappropriate work emails. The cross-referenced social media logins. And the audio recording that, in just under 4 minutes, revealed how they plotted not just betrayal but a clean, silent erasure of me. By mid-afternoon, the ripples had already started. Raymond's school district suspended him pending investigation. Harper received word through a mutual friend that several of his mentorship clients had cut ties completely. His face was removed from the upcoming educational summit's brochure within hours. Meryl lost the mask. Her curated image shattered the moment the recording hit her supervisor's desk. Her part-time consulting deal with the city dissolved the next morning. But the real collapse came privately when her parents, who had been planning a family celebration dinner the following week, called me to apologize. They had received the letter too, and it broke their hearts. But I didn't smile when I heard. I didn't cheer. I didn't post a smug status or send a gloating text. I just sat on the cabin porch with Harper, drinking black coffee in the stillness and feeling, for the first time in months, that I wasn't carrying someone else's shame. Meryl tried to reach out. She called 27 times in 2 days. Left long voicemails that shifted from anger to weeping to empty declarations like, "You'll always be my safe place." She showed up at the cabin once but didn't knock. Just stood there outside the gate like she was trying to summon a ghost she no longer believed in. I didn't let her in. She sent a final message a week later. Just one sentence. "I thought you were too weak to do this." I didn't reply. Not because I had nothing to say, but because I finally understood I didn't owe her any more words. I had given her years of explanations, apologies, and understanding. And now I was giving myself something I had never dared to claim, peace. Harper and I kept in touch. Not romantically, at least not at first. There was too much healing to do, too many pieces to gather before anything else could grow. But we checked in often. Laughed about the awkward silence between us the day after everything dropped. There was something unspoken between us, not a bond born of revenge, but of survival. Of honesty. Months passed. I sold the house Meryl and I shared. Donated most of the furniture. Kept only a few things, my books, my dad's old watch, a photo of my dog who passed before all this started. I bought a small fixer-upper just outside a quiet town surrounded by hills and open sky. The kind of place where people wave to you whether they know you or not. One morning I opened the mailbox and found a small postcard. No return address. But I recognized the handwriting. I hope you're still writing. You always made the best observations when no one thought you were paying attention. Don't stop being that man. You matter more than you think. It wasn't signed, but I knew it was Harper. I sat down at my desk and opened a fresh notebook. Not to write about Meryl. Not about betrayal. But about what happens when a man stops shrinking to fit someone else's story. That was the real ending. Not the betrayal. Not the plan. Not even the collapse. The ending was finding myself again and realizing I'd never been weak. Just quiet. And finally, I was ready to raise my voice.